Yeah, fine. In the last session, we used to cover about the Hibernate query language. So it's purely under the selection and non-selection. That is a form of select and non-select operations. Okay. So we used to have many of the scenarios which we used to done, right? Now today, let's go for criteria. So it's purely supposed to execute the select but not non-select. Okay. And the HQL, it's purely the static where it executes the queries, but whereas criteria which supports the dynamic content, so where it is going to be perform the many of the conditions where we'll have a restrictions. Okay, and the criteria where we'll create in the form of an object. Okay, so that means it is going to be represent the entire object, not in the partial object, but still we can have a chance and we can have additional methods where we can also convert in the partial object also, that we'll see you later. Now first we'll go for a criteria. It's a class of Hibernate package. Okay, so it should have a number of lifecycle methods. So what are the lifecycle methods here? We'll have a add method is one, add order is another method. Then we'll go for set first result is another method. Set max result is another method. And set projection is another method. Okay, so these are all the life cycle methods into a criteria class. add order, first result, max result, and projection. So that means add where it is going to be add the restrictions where in the form of conditions. Okay, and this criteria where we are going to be provide the life cycle, and based on these life cycle methods we can also add, there are many conditions in the form of restrictions is another, where we'll have criterion is an interface. Okay, restrictions is a class, and these two are the components which are available into hibernate.criterion package, where we'll have a criterion interface and a restrictions class. So the restrictions class is going to be provide a number of static methods where we can perform the many of the conditions where we can use in the real time. For example, I want to get employees whose salary is 25,000 above, and I want to get the employees whose salary is less than 20,000. I want to get the employees whose designation is equals to software engineer. So I want to get the employees, okay, whose what do you call designation is equals to software engineer and the salary is less than 25,000. So that means if you see there are two conditions where we can use for and or. Okay, so here we used to go for and, there the designation is equals to software engineer and the salary is less than 20,000. Both will be satisfied and finally will return the result. Fine. So how do you create the instance of criteria? Anyway, we had a session in the form of a factory. So based on this session, there is another method. So that is what create criteria. It's a method, contains only one argument. Now let's go for in the session. So there is a method called, we used to write like this. So criteria CR is equals to, or CT is equals to session. We got an object for session dot create criteria, where it contains an object called Pojo class object. Pojo class. This is what the object where it represents. Okay. Now the criteria got an object for Pojo. We used to iterate. Okay. And here you can have another method that is very important for the criteria. That is what, where we'll have a list method. List is a method which returns the complete object state where we'll have contains whatever the rows. Okay, now let's see you the first scenario. So how do you fetch all the records into the Pojo class in the form of table? So we have many of the tables. Okay, so in the last session where we'll have there are the tables called employees, payments, products, students. Okay, now we'll try to fetch those tables here in turn 11 am, where to select products is the table, employee is a table. Okay, and similarly student is a table, and we have a payment as 100 PAM amount and all. Okay, now employee is a table, so I want to fetch all these employees. So how can I fetch? Very simple. Now let's go for a simple example using the criteria. So anyway, you are familiar how to fetch by using the hql hibernate query language. Okay, so where we'll use the from the Pojo class, where it refers the references by using to select whatever the properties in that particular Pojo class. Now the same way we are going to be performed into purely selection, but not non-selection here. Now we'll see many of the constraints based on the criteria. Now I used to go with the same criteria. We'll have a table called employee. There is an employee Pojo class where we'll see this is an employee Pojo class. So where it contains all the ID, name, designation and address. Okay, we had already the mapping resources. Fine. So configuration is also configured the employee. Very good. Now let's see for this. Okay, now I used to create another class for criteria separately. So employee criteria, it's a class where it contains the main method. You know the first job of build the session factory and get the session where we can perform the operations, right? Similarly, you can do the same job here. Session is equals to a new configuration. From the configuration package, configure the what you call configuration file and build the session factory. Then after, get the instance of session where you can open the session. Now the session is ready with us. Okay, now we will try to get the select from the table of an employee in the form of employee Pojo class, right? So what I'm doing here, I used to have a method called session.createCriteria, where it contains only one object in the form of emp bean dot class. So this is what the required an argument of the create criteria. So this create criteria method, which returns an instance of what criteria, it's in a hibernate package where we'll have cr. Okay, so once we get the criteria, anyway from this criteria there are the life cycle methods. So if you want to get all the bin state of rows, then we will use cr.list is a method whose return type is list. List into util package. List is equals to something. This is the simple way. And once we get a list, you know how do you iterate by using the iterator. Okay. So in the same way, you can also use the generic type here. Anyway, it will be written an employee bin. So finally, we'll try to iterate by using the for each loop, or else you can go with the iterator also, not a problem. So iterator, again we have a generic type of emp bin. It is equals to list dot iterator, where we can iterate it dot has next, and next will return the instance of what emp bin, right? So emp bin is equals to it dot next. No need to have a typecasting because we already declare the generic type. Now we can print all of them by using a simple way of SOP. So bean dot all the getter methods where we'll get the row by row in the form of columns. Now we need to have an ID, and we'll go for the second column of what, get employee name. We'll have another column for, so bean dot get designation. We'll have another column for, sorry, bean dot get, yes, address. So that is going to be iterate for every time, and after the job is done we used to close this session. And if you want, you can use anyway confirmation got to be the list of employees, right? So we'll directly close this session. Okay, now we'll try to run this program. So I'm just explaining you again for here after getting the output, so nothing to worry. Look at this, I got the result in the form of all the rows. Okay, in the simple way, 100, 101, 102, 103 up to 109. So each of the row has 4 columns of 100 ID, name, and what is this? This is for designation. Okay, then we'll have a, sorry, yes, name, designation, and address. Okay, now that is a simple way how we are going to be. I'm going to explain you again. Please try to understand the scenario here. You know already that what you call IBM, sorry, hibernate mapping file. So where it mapped with the employee table of same story what we discussed in the yesterday. Now what I'm doing here, I'm going to be use a criteria, so where it performs only the select operation but not non-select. Okay, and one we are going to be perform the dynamic way because HQL is a static. That's the reason we used to choose a criteria. How do you perform the criteria? Very simple. So once we get this session, there is a method called create criteria. It contains an object of Pojo. We are representing the complete object. It's in the full-fledged manner. So we do not refer as of now in the partial object. Okay. Now which written as a criteria, it's a class of what you call hibernate package. Okay. So that criteria has many of the lifecycle methods here. There is a method called list method. What happened here? Yes, there is a method called list method. So list is a method. It is going to be represent in the form of what you call list. So based on the list which contains the Pojo in the form of all the rows. Okay. Now each of the row contains the properties in the form of, yes, we have a getter methods. So finally, you know have to get the list to iterate by using the iterator of generic type. So if you use the generic type, no need to typecast here. So if you do not use the generic type, you are going to be written as an object and typecast with object into a subclass of EMP bin. Okay. So if you add a generic type, no need to typecast. We can skip that job because the generic is always specifying that which is written in the form of EMP bin object. Okay. Now, so once we are going to be iterate, each of the row will have an object of EMP bin. Now we are going to be iterate that bin properties in the form of get ID, name, designation, and address. Okay. So this is the simple way you can perform the select query by using criteria. Comfortable? Now let's see you one each of them, the life cycle of what you call criteria. So we have seen only one method called list. Okay. Similarly, we have many of the methods called add. So I want to get only the employees. Okay. So which are our designation is equals to what you call something like what do you say, it's in the software engineer, or the name starts with what do you call int or intone. Okay, a name starts with SCA. Okay, and we will also check with is it null or not kind of thing. Okay, now we will add many of the conditions here, many of the conditions where we will see you those conditions in the form of restrictions class where it contains the many of the static methods. So we will see each of them. Now we'll go back to the pane, see all the restrictions, static methods, then after we'll come back here. Fine. So restrictions, I used to write here. Restrictions is a class where it contains the life cycle methods whose are static methods. Okay. Now I would like to go for, there is a method called GT. What is this? Greater than. Greater than. So how do you use this GT? Are very simple. The GT method contains the two arguments. Argument 1 is nothing but property and argument 2 is nothing but condition. Say suppose 20,000. So what does it mean to say? If the property of salary is greater than 20,000, we used to fetch those employees. Got my point? So this is the similar condition where we will use in the SQL in the form of where, okay, that salary is greater than 20,000 or 2,000 here, not 20,000. Okay, same thing in this criteria we used to write. So there is a GT, it's a method into a restrictions class. It's a static method we used to call restrictions.gt, where it contains two arguments. The first argument is nothing but property name and the second argument is nothing but a value, so which is going to be validating in the form of object. Okay, now same way we'll have a LT for what? Less than. The property name and is less than 15,000. This is the simple way here. So this is called less than. Less than, that means I used to write in the simple way, the property, for example, salary is less than 15,000. This is the condition. Okay, fine. Okay, so GT means greater than, LT means less than. So we can also check with the between condition. Between, it's a method. So again we'll have a property value 1 for suppose 15,000, value 2 is nothing but 30,000. So what does it mean to say? If the salary is between value 1 to value 2, 15,000 to 30,000, we used to fetch only the between condition of 15,000 to 30,000. So that is what we will use in the form of between restriction. Okay. Similarly, we'll see you. Like is a common, the where we'll use the many of the places like. So generally in the search scenario, while typing the name, suppose Intone networks, when we used to type INT, so that is based on the starting name. So INT, so whenever it matches the next letter onwards, we'll find out the result, right? So like, yes, we can use like here. Again we'll have a property, the first object, and the first argument. Second argument is nothing but, so we'll use the value. The value should be starts with something like intone in, say this is the model symbol. So it is going to be find out. To fetch starts with in. The third letter, whatever it is, that is going to be written all the records. Okay, and this is not sensitive. What exactly means to say? Case sensitive. Suppose if you want to fetch only the in the form of alphabets in the lower case, okay, and we can use, there is another method called I like is a method. This is purely sensitive, so it is going to be get pure based on the alphabet. Say suppose if you use like this or like this, you can go for that. This is for sensitive. Okay, non-sensitive we can use for like, sensitive you can use for I like, that is called case sensitive. Got my point? So this is the another restriction where we can add into the criteria for fetching the list. Fine. So similarly we will see you is null condition, is null condition. So what is mean by is null? So if that field is null, if that field is null, based on that we used to retrieve. Again we'll have only one argument of property. Okay, if the property is null, so whenever it matches null, then only we used to get. Then immediately we'll have a vice versa, the reverse condition, not null, is not null. Again the same as contain only one property. Okay, if the property is not is equals to null, we used to fetch all the data in the form of records. Okay, and same job will have another common function called is empty. If that property is an empty, then only we used to fetch. Then the reverse way you can also use is not empty. So these are all the functions where we can use in the form of methods property. Okay, so less than, greater than, between, like, I like. So this is the non case sensitive. I like is a case sensitive, like is nothing but a generic way, okay, which does not bother about the cases. Okay, so is null, is not null, is empty, is not empty. Okay, so these are all the constraints where we'll have a conditions we can use for where class of what you call in the general SQL statements. Same thing we can also use in the hibernate. Okay, there is a class called restrictions where it contains all of these static methods. Okay, now these restrictions are going to be added into the criteria by using an add method, by using an add method. Okay, so that means we have an criteria object ct.add of, so you can add these restrictions. Finally we will get the list based on the criteria. Okay, and similarly you can also use for logical conditions which are nothing but and or. So what I mean to say, and name like in and salary is greater than 20,000. So how many here? 2. So how can we? By using add. And there is another situation called or, either 1 or 2, either 1 or 2. So that means we can also use for and or by using logical expressions where we'll have a and or. Okay, so how do you use and or? Again, so based on the restrictions, anyway, that will be written the criterion, not a criteria, criterion. Again, it's an interface. Okay, now finally add, we can use simply restrictions and or. Will have and argument 1 property comma property 2, or say property in the form of condition. So this is the way you can use for and or. It's not add, it's an and. Okay, so these are all the logical expressions and or. So yes, we have another methods. Those are nothing but ascending order, descending order. Okay, so there is another class for a specific ascending to descending. Order is a class where it contains the descending and ascending methods in the form of static. Okay, so where we can see you the order in the form of ascending to descending. Okay, and there is another important concept called projections. Again, projection is a class. Okay, so based on the projections we can find the count of the what do you call employees. Okay, and we can also use to have a average of the salary, max salary, min salary. Yesterday we have already seen in the form of hql, right? Those functions also we can use, and sometimes we'll have only a single property. So the list is written or the complete object, right? I want to go with the partial object, not to be full-fledged, then we can use, there is a projection in the form of property. So we can define the property, so that is going to be written that particular property only. So we used to cover all of them the one by one. Now let's move to a program, use all this one by one. So if you want to perform, we need another column here. So I need to add one more column. Okay, let's move to configuration of ways to add one more property. Name is equals to salary or sal, whatever you want. Then we can also add that salary private float salary. Let's go for int also, not a problem. Create the setter getter for that. Okay, we just added the another property here. Now I'll go back to execute once for the employees, then after we'll come back to the criteria class. Okay, client employee, where is that? Okay, client employee. This is for employee criteria. Where is the client for yes, this is for that. Okay, we'll remove. Now we'll try to add the employees. So we got a session is required. Okay, now ID, EMP name, designation and salary. Okay, I used to have this. This is for what entity? So we used to go for EMP. EMP bean is equals to new EMP bean, and we used to set all of them set of ID, right? So I need to remove all the rows from here. Okay, it's an empty right now. Set ID 100 bean dot set employee name Madhavi, bean dot set designation software engineer, bean dot set salary, say suppose it would be okay, and bean dot set address California. Fine, this is one. Similarly, let's go for another. This is bean1, 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 and this is for 1. And what are the list here? Nitish. So he is again software engineer. His salary is 2578 something else. Okay, and he is from Canada. Now again we need to have one more. The simple way, we'll change that object of 2. Fine. So who is next? Ruchi. She is QA. Salary would be, now she is from USA. Again we need to go for one more. This is for Bain 3. Now who is next? Sairam. He is from senior software engineer. Okay, I do one thing. I would like to change the salary here. 25,000, 20. Okay, and we'll have this, and here we'll have this. Okay, now being 3 103 Siram SSE, and the address would be UK. Now would like to go for another row of being 4 4. This is for 104 and Sairam Sheila Svetlana. Okay, then we'll have team lead. Salary is 29,000. She is from UK or USA. We need to go for last. This is for 5. Svetlana. She is from manager, project manager. Salary would be 40,000. She is from New Jersey. Okay, so we got 6. Anybody left? Right. Okay, now finally we are going to be save everyone in the form of bin 2 3 4 5, right? Okay, this is for 1, this is for 2 3 4 5. Okay, we used to commit all of them. So anything wrong? Okay, now we are going to be run this once. So all of them got to be inserted. We need the table. Good. So we got a table. Now we'll go back to criteria, where I am going to be performing many of the restrictions. How I am going to be add for all these life cycle methods. Please understand. Now after this criteria instance, I am going to be add another restriction for cr dot add is a method where it contains an argument in the form of restrictions. It's a yes, again into the criterion, it's a package restrictions class where it contains the static methods. Look at here, there are many methods. I used to pick up few of them. Okay, now we'll try to get so we'll have, okay, we'll go ahead with directly. So we'll try to get the greater than, greater than contains the property name. So what is the property name here? We'll use what is the property for that? Okay, salary. Let's go for salary here. Salary is 15,000. I want to get whose salary is 15,000. So greater than 15,000. I want to list all the employees. Okay. Now this is the simple way you can add the restrictions. Okay. So salary is a property where we are going to be finding salary is greater than 15,000. We have many of the employees, right? So based on the table, we'll have a condition if where salary is greater than 15,000, I want to get those employees only. Okay, so that's what we are going to be perform here. Okay, now okay, look at here, I got to get all the employees 100 to 105. So what is the condition? 103. Yes, 103 got missed. Okay. As for this 103 of Sairam, whose salary is 4,536, right? But as for this condition, is it satisfies or not? So we have these many employees whose salary is greater than 15,000. Okay. Suppose would like to go for more than that, only 20,000. 20,000. Now we'll have, yes, we got to see 100 Madhavi, Ruchi, Sheila and Shwetalana employees whose salary is greater than 20,000. Okay. Still we need to get many of the conditions here. 25, 29, 40, 45, right? So let's try to run for 40,000. Yes, we got to know only one employee called Ruchi. Ruchi's salary is, where is Ruchi? Yes, 45,362. Okay, so that means greater than whatever the salary. So this is the way you can perform. Same time we can also use less than LT. That's enough. So LT salary is less than 40,000. So we will get the whatever the employees. We used to have these are all the employees whose salary is less than 40,000. Okay, now good. Similarly, you can try for many of the life cycle whatever we have listed for all these conditions. Okay, now I will show you another few. Let's check for like and between. So we'll check it one. Yes, Sairam. Yeah, okay, S letter we'll find many of the names here. I would like to go for yes. Then I can use for like whose name. What is the name for the property? E-name, right? Okay. E-name. Then how does it starts? Yes. Okay. Better to go for SH. Let's find out Sheila and Svetlana. Okay. Let's find out SH. Is there any uppercase? Okay. Fine. It's not a problem. We'll use for ampersand. Okay. We'll try to run this. I'm using for like. Let's see how many rows we used to get. Yes, we used to get 2 rows. Okay, so that means like doesn't matter about whatever the case is, still it returns. So whichever starts with sh, the third character might be anything. Okay, so that's what the result from like function. If you use I like, then what happened? sh, we couldn't find any of the names because it's okay, still it is written. Okay, it's not validating. Okay, so MySQL, whichever the columns in the uppercase, that will not be considered as the cases, it will be written. Fine. So okay, if you use in the Oracle database, you can get the data. Fine. Now you can also check with the between condition. Let's go for between here. So between of, again, what is the spelling wrong? Here we'll have again salary 15,000 to 35,000. 15,000 to 35,000. Okay, this is the between check. 15,000 to 35,000. What is the problem here? Acha, we need to close one more. Fine. So 15 to 30,000. The between salary 15 to 30. Whose are the employees? Okay, 15, 1, 2, 3. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's find out how many employees we used to get. Okay, so we used to get, there are 3 employees of Madhavi, Nitish and Sheila. Okay, so these 3 are the employees. Fine. So this is the way you can use for many of the restrictions in the form of criteria based. Okay, so there is a simple function of criteria we will use to add all these restrictions. Anyway, we got a complete object from the Pojo class where we are going to be perform these are all the restrictions. Okay, so based on this finally we got the list. Got my point? The same way you can check with is null, is empty, not empty. Okay, so there are many things and I would like to show you one for add, another for R, so that is also important for you. Now what I want to go with, I just add the, okay, will comment as of now. I'll try to get there is a criterion sal is equals to restrictions dot greater than of salary is 15,000. Number one. Number two, another criterion for name is equals to restrictions for what? Like e-name is starts with sh. I want to go with both of them. So finally I can add. How can I add? Very simple way. Cr dot add of restrictions dot add is a function and not add, and is a function, so where it contains the salary and name. Fine. So we used to get based on and condition. Salary is greater than 15,000 and name starts with sh. If both are satisfied, then only we used to get the data. Now I used to run this program. Where salary is greater than and e-name like. Okay, is it going to execute or not? The confirmation. Query done. Okay, sorry, we did a mistake here. Fine. Okay, we got 2 rows here, 104 Sheila, 105 Shwetalana. Okay, Similarly, you can also check with designation based. Suppose DESZ designation, where we'll have designation starts with yes. Okay. Okay, we used to get Madhavi Nitish. Fine. So same way you can find out many of the situations. If you want to use for OR, yes, you can use OR also. This is for OR, logical expressions. Salary is greater than, and what do you call, this is the name, designation starts with yes. So whichever matches, that is going to be get the result. Okay, we used to get these many. Got my point? Fine. So now we'll be back to another conditions where we will check with the projections. Then after we'll go with the order. Okay. Now in the same syntax of the criteria, I would like to change in another way of syntax. We'll try to find out the count of the rows, how many rows in this particular criteria based on the object. So if you want to check, so very simple. So there is another property called set projection into the criteria. There is another method where we'll have set projection. So it contains the object in the form of argument in the form of projections, or we'll have a projections, again criterion contains the another static method called row count. Okay, so that will be written the count of the rows, count of the rows. Anyway, we used to return, so because this particular projection we are going to be find the count, right, count of star. So in the yesterday session we might be seeing that count of star where it returns the count of the rows. Okay, so which does not return this many, because need not worry about this iteration. We'll directly go back to print sys out list dot get of 0. We have only one column, one row. So we used to know the count size of the rows, how many rows in that particular table. Yes, we got how many rows? 6 rows in that table. Okay, now same time we can also add the single column property. I want to get only a column of name or salary or any other ID or designation. So if you want to know only one particular column, yes, you can use that. So same similar job, set projection dot property. It's a method. Property, it's a method, contains the property. Say suppose ename. Finally we used to return the list, right? Okay, so don't use this because object obj, where we are going to be print that object in the form of conversion. Okay, so object dot to string, where it is going to be convert. Now let's try to print. I want to get only ename. Yes, look at here, which returns Madhavi, Nitesh, Ruchi, Sairam, Sheila, Shvetalana, and done the query. Okay, now it is going to be written all the names from the table. Okay, that's where we can add the property. Fine. So we'll also see there are many what do you call mathematical functions where we can use it in the average if you want max, min and sum. Yes, you can use it. Very simple job. Let's go for property. Rather than of the property, we'll use another function called so projections, where we'll have average. Okay, average of the salary or max salary. Better to go for that. Max salary, min salary kind of thing. You can use it. Okay, salary anyway that will be written double, so object will convert into double. Okay, or else we can print directly. It returns only one column, right? Here we'll have list get of 0. Let's try to find out. Yes, 45,362. Okay, now same time if you want to see the min salary for that, yes, min salary. Yes, 4,536. Okay, if you want to count for the complete salary, so while generating the payslip of a company, okay, so we used to calculate in the simple way. So we used to know what is the total of so where we are going to be paid the payslips. Now we want to know, so 1,59,687. So that's the total salary for all the employees. Okay, so these are all the simple ways, like the functions where we can see you. Okay, so these are all important for you based on your okay requirement. Fine, so let's go for the similar way of order where we can return the ascending or descending order. So let's find out those things also, then we'll wind up this. So what we do, so we can use again for another important function of okay, we can comment for this. Now I used to add is a function, and immediately we can find out there is a function called add order, contains an argument of order, right? So let's choose add order. So as for the life cycle, now order, it's a class for same order for criterion, and look at here, there are two, one for ascending, another for descending. Okay, I want to know the ascending order for property. Which property? E-name property. Sorry, E-name property, and the list where it contains the emp bean, and remove this statement. We'll have iteration for same as generic type. This is for emp bean, bean is equals to we used to iterator will have a syntactical error. Fine, so we used to print all of them. Bean dot get id, bean dot get name, bean dot get designation, bean dot get salary, bean dot get address. Okay, now let's try to print. So it is going to be written based on the employee name, Madhavi, Nitish, Ruchi, all these things. And if you, I think the order itself we used to insert as for the alphabetical, I think so. Now we do one thing, let's try to go with the column name of what do you call designation. Better. Yes, look at here. So 105, 102, 100, 101, 103, 104 based on the designation. Okay. So the same way we can also use descending order. Descending order of same property called designation. Okay. Even you can also use for salary. So designation, sorry, descending order based on the salary. So you want to see that least to highest. Yes, we need to get. So Ruchi, Shvetalana, Sheila, Madhavi, Nitish and Saira. So based on the descending order of what? Salary. Highest to least. Highest to least. If you want to know the least to highest, we will use for ascending order. Okay. So these are all the functions where we used to get criteria, where we'll have a life cycle of add order. Okay, we have seen many of them. Add we got to be covered, set projection we got to be covered, add order also be covered, list is covered. Okay, and so each of the add where it contains the restrictions, we have seen many of the restrictions here. Okay, and we have a projections, we have any order. Okay, so and also seen the logical conditions in the form of and or based on the restrictions. Okay, and or here. Okay, so these are all many so functions where you can perform the criteria. Okay, and still you can also use for the pagination. So again we have there are two methods where we can use for. So these are all the methods. First result, max result. Usually if you see many of the real-time applications today, okay, there are the paginations where we can pop up the list of employees. Okay, we can't able to see all of the employees, right? So we'll have a pagination. Each of the page it will record, it will fetch up to 1 to 10, next 11 to 20, 21 to 30. So in that scenario we can use set first result starts with 1 and max result is 10. So based on this criteria, so every time we used to set the priority base, like 1 to 10 in the first page. When I click next, it will go for 11 to 20, 21 to 30, 31 to 40. So whichever you want, you can use for that kind of scenario. The pagination can be performed by using, there are two functions here, one for set first result and set max result. But HQL Hibernate query language does not support the pagination, but whereas hcql, so that is called criteria query language, where it supports pagination. Okay, and this is the very important job, but I am not able to show you because we have a simple, like 5 to 6 rows. Okay, so you can try for paginations and remember these methods. What are the methods here? So one for first result, max result. Okay, you are going to be set the values from 1 to 10 as of the first page. When I click next, then automatically count will be increased by 11 to 20, 21 to 30, 31 to 40 kind of thing. Okay, so that is going to be iterate for next kind of thing. Same way you can also use for back also. Okay, so we'll see if you have a time, and I will try to execute one real-time application. So where it will contains 100 or 200 rows, I can show you the pagination if possible. Okay, fine. So this is the simple way you can perform, and whatever we discussed as for the Hibernate, same thing you can configure in the servlet. Very simple job. You know how do you perform this servlet? Yes or no? So there is a client where it will connecting in a servlet in the form of request. Got it? So we need that input parameters where this server, whatever the Hibernate is performing the JDBC, right? So wherever the JDBC, you can replace the JDBC and use for Hibernate. Okay, so you will add the mapping file into src folder configuration where it's configured. So we never perform the business logic, right? In the business logic, you need to get the session and save or update or delete or whatever the select. Okay, so once that job is done, anyway, you know how do you return in the form of servlet. So business of bin where you can change this Hibernate. That's it. Okay, you can try for once in the Hibernate in the form of servlet to Hibernate struts. Yes, you can also use. We already done with the assignment. Okay, the same assignment you can replace the JDBC into Hibernate. So that's a good practice. Okay, Let's see you how many got to be. So at least if you perform any sample or sample, whatever one or two projects we can use for hibernate, so that will give you more knowledge. Okay. Still we left for mapping. Anyway, we used to start today. So what is mapping and all? Okay. So once if we covered with the mapping session also, so that will be more enough to perform the hibernate in the simple way. Fine. So what is the difference of criteria and what are hibernate query language and hcql criteria query language? Okay. So hql it's purely runs with the select in the form of select and non-select, but whereas criteria it performs only select but not non-select. Okay. HQL has only the static query, but whereas criteria in the dynamic query where we can use many of the life cycles. Got my point? So as for the performance, we'll have HQL comparatively criteria, but that the HQL does not support the dynamic. Based on that, we used to go for criteria. And another difference of here is especially the pagination. As of today, that is very important for us. So as for the client is need the pagination, even the user friendly wherever the applications what we seen in the real world. So those are all what are the online shopping cart e-commerce, especially banking applications where it is going to be get the list of so there are many things will have okay populate in the scenario called pagination, right? So criteria is only the place it can support to implement the pagination, but whereas HQL does not support the paginations. Okay, so these are all the major important points where you can differentiate between one to others, HQL to HCQL. Okay, so I will try to project you in another session where we'll see at least one application which is going to be highlight for the pagination of 1 to 10 or 1 to 20 or 1 to 30 kind of thing, page to page. Okay, and I will also give you one more session where it is going to be covered in the joints also. We'll see you later. Okay, now I will try to move into another important session where exactly it's in the mapping. So collections, right? So generally you are aware of collection. So collection is nothing but it's represents the group of objects. In the util package we used to have many of the collections hierarchy where we'll have a set and list, right? So usually we have indexed and non-indexed. So list is purely onto the index, but whereas set is not index. List and map both are contains the index, right? Even map also contains key value, but whereas set, so it does not follow the index. Okay, so the collection is nothing but collection of. Similarly, as for the SQL in the form of database, any of the project where we'll have a relation between the table to table. Now, we'll take an example as for our scenario. Why do you want to go with other way? So assume that this is the table for let's take in a trainers, and we have another table called consultant. Fine. Okay. The trainers where will specified into a technology. Based on the technology, we may be find many of the consultant. Got it? So trainer is where we'll have a constraint. Each of the trainer based on the course will have many of the consultant. Okay. The same consultant might be repeated with various trainers also. Am I right or not? Fine. So here we used to have the columns of trainers. For example, let's go with don't worry about the design part, we'll go for this. We'll have ID, this is for name of the faculty, course, and some other column. Assume that this is the constraint ID, identification, and this is for name of the trainer, and this is for highlighting course, okay, and duration for example. Now as for this scenario, and if you want to work it out in the high level, courses again will have one more table. Okay, so we used to get the course ID, that's enough. That is also in another scenario. Fine. So ID where we'll have 100, name Srinivas, course Java, duration 2 months or whatever it is, 200, fine, hours or whatever. Okay, so in this trainer of Srinivas, so which is referred many of the consultant, right? We have a table of consultant. Okay, similarly we'll have the consultant ID constraint, and this is for name of the consultant. Better to give some space. Name and address, and this is the reference ID. Now just for simple way, this is for consultant constraint ID primary key, this is the name of the consultant, and this is for address, and this is the foreign key. Foreign key is nothing but or else we'll go for TID, trainer ID. Now consultant ID might be one, name, let's go for Madhavi, fine, address ABC. Now which is referred by whose trainer? 100. Similarly we'll have second a consultant for Nitish, then whose address is something XYZ, and he is also referred by the consultant, sorry, trainer of 100. Similarly we'll go for 3 Sheila or Rachi, whose address is AAA. Okay, now we'll try to enter one more 101. Here the trainer is Venkat from .NET or Android. Okay, whose duration is 100, for example. Now she is going to be referred by 101, and same place will have 4 Sheila, address is BBB, and she is going to be referred by 100. Now again 5 Ruchi is also referred by 100. That's simple way. Okay, now I want to know whose are the consultant based on the Srinivas or Java and Android. Okay, so there is an identification of ID is 100, right? ID is going to be referred by here. That means one ID has many references between the consultant. It is the relation between one to many, one to many. So this is going to be referred. So here we have one, so will be referred by what? So there are many places, 1, 2, 3, 4, all will be referred this, and which is going to be, got my point? So one has many, this is called one to many. So that means if I want to know, so whose consultant are going to be attend based on the 100, that means Java course. So I can use a simple query here. So I want to know, select name Srinivas, or else anyway I know the faculty name, right? Trainer name Srinivas. I want to know only the consultant, so select consultant reference of C dot what do you call name and ID also, if you want identification for the consultant. Okay, ID, name, comma, address. If you want to know, then we can use where the ID is equals to what? Trainer ID is equals to TID. So that's what into the consultant. So this is the simple query in the SQL, right? But in the Hibernate, so rather than of writing that kind of scenario anyway, so we already avoided for the JDBC in the Hibernate framework. So it will have an advanced way you can easily to fetch the data in the form of ORM, object relation mapping, right? So now this is the scenario if you want to perform. What kind of relation we had? One to many relation, one to many. Okay. So if you want to get this kind of scenario, what I mean to say, when I used to create the trainer along with the consultant, will have only one trainer as many of the consultant. So where it is going to be referred by the trainer ID used to referred as a foreign key into the consultant. Now consultant is again CID is a primary key, trainer we have a ID as a primary key. This primary key is going to be referred in the consultant of foreign key in the form of TID. This is the foreign key. Will have FK, that is called foreign key. So this is for primary key called PK, primary key. So this is also primary key, right? Fine. So this is called one to many relation. So this kind of relation if you want to perform, yes, in this relation between one to one we already done, one to many, many to one, or many to many. Okay, so in this kind of relations if you want to build the Hibernate, so we will definitely use for the collections hierarchy in the form of index or non-index in the form of set and list. Okay, so we will use set and list based on basically, so an employee, sorry, trainer will have many of the consultant. Many is nothing but object, right? Each of the object will have a consultant details, right? So that means we have two Pojo classes where will contains the many of the objects from the consultant which are going to be represented into the trainer in the form of collections hierarchy where we'll use for set or list. Okay, so which we used to contains many of the consultant where we are going to be represent immediately. Okay, now if you see the syntax or if you see the live program for manipulating this kind of scenario, you may be surprised that, like, so the same thing if you want to go with the JDBC, so there are many constraints where we can follow. Once we create or insert first as a trainer, because that is the main constraint, right? So once we done, then we used to return an ID. So that based on ID, we are going to be referred into the consultant. So that means first we need a trainer, then after we can perform into the consultant, right? So that means we need to have many of the queries, many of the statements. First we need to create or insert into trainer, then after we'll go for consultant where we need to insert one for Madhavi, another for Nitish, another for Sheila, another for Ruchi. We used to repeat for many of the queries. Okay, again it's a constraint where we are going to be retrieve the data. We need to write very kind of like difficulty logic. What kind of logic we used to write? So very simple, where we'll have if you want to retrieve, select t dot name comma, then c dot cid, c dot name, c dot address. We'll try to increase address from trainers t consultant c, where then we'll have a condition t dot id is equals to 100 and t dot id is equals to c dot tid. Got it? So this is the way you can write. Then only we used to fetch name of the trainer, id of the consultant, like so it will be written. It will be written. So in this scenario if you run, so we used to get how many rows? Yes, we'll have many of the rows. Okay, Srinivas, then we'll have a Madhavi, okay, and one for Rich, Nitish, another for Sheila, another for Ruchi. Okay, we used to get these many records. Got my point? So all the records which is common, name of the trainer is common, okay, and ID is common. And each of the consultant has their own ID. It's a primary constraint for CID. So finally we used to get 1, 2 for Nitish, 4 for Sheila, 5th for Ruchi. And here Ruchi is also repeated because Ruchi is attending parallelly for one for Java class, another for .NET class. Similarly, the .NET where we'll have a 101, you can find out 101 .NET consultant like we used to written Ruchi as of now. You can also add for Madhavi.NET, Nitish for .NET. Okay, so again we'll get Nitish, Madhavi and Ruchi for .NET. Okay, so this is the way you can perform the one-to-many relation. Okay, but these kind of constraints we need to remember. But we are not good at SQL for suppose, and still we struggle for performing this kind of job in the JDBC. Okay, but it is compulsory, it is common for whatever the projects in today. So that is the reason in the last session I used to say for everyone, do something, some work, some hard work or effort of like a smart work where we'll try to understand the relation between the tables. Okay, so where we can design the tables between, so what kind of relation is required, one to one or one to many or many to many. Okay, so that will help you in the real-time scenarios. Got my point? So still you have a time, you can work it out. Okay, this kind of relations between the table to table. So when you get this kind of idea, you used to design for one simple application. It might be anything, it doesn't matter about the size. Okay, so based on the application you will try to design for the tables first, then after we'll think about the relations between one to others, what kind of relations required for that, so which is going to be referred in the another tables. Okay, and that kind of work effort if you start, so that will give you more help into the environment. Okay, so still you have a time, but I don't know how many are going to be perform that kind of effort. Okay, still I do not check with you, but if I try to ask any kind of assignment, you are simply skipping, but anyway, not a problem. So that's up to you, it's not my responsibility. Okay, fine. So this is the simple job where I'm going to be perform this relation between one to many. This is actually in the one to many. Okay, we'll also see you many to one, vice versa. Okay, so reverse of this relation is nothing but many to one, right? So one of scenario where we can simulate in the form of program. So that program is also very easy, don't get confused. But today's session, whatever we discussed, you will try to simulate all of them in the form of practice. Okay, so that will help you more on that. Okay, so that is very session for today. So we used to cover about many of the criteria in the form of restrictions, order, and also projections, where we'll have many of the life cycle functions. Okay, so need to cover all of them in the form of practice. Okay, you need to do a practice in the form of like HQL first, then criteria. So you'll get the differentiation of between the HQL and hcql. So finally you can fix whichever you comfortable for that. Okay, fine. So any more questions, please let me know. I will try to fix it out. Okay, so I think if you do practice, then I will let you know. There are the many constraints of the queries where I will receive, but still I am not received any kind of query. That means to say I don't know whether are you practicing or not. Fine. So yeah, what is the problem, Anusha? Okay. Yesterday I used to send. Okay, I'll check it out once, Anusha. Okay, na? And I'm not able to get your voice clearly, but anyway, I used to forward the session. Okay. Any other questions? Fine. So catch you tomorrow. Okay. So tomorrow we used to discuss about this scenario between there is a trainer where we'll have a consultant, right? So this is the scenario which we used to cover in tomorrow session. So we used to have an example. Okay. So Fine. So catch you tomorrow at same time. Thank you. Bye bye. Have a nice day.